Yes, Oprah, time's up. Time's up on patronizing women and demonizing men. Time's up on resenting an entire gender when most of them are not against us. Hashtag metoo was a necessary part of this movement, but time's up isn't taking us where it should. The Time's Up movement at the Golden Globes was a perfect example of what is going wrong. Women were taking digs at men instead of celebrating their work. When Natalie Portman called out the line of all male directors for the Best Director category, women were high-fiving in the audience. We don't need to engage in the same behavior that we're condemning in some of these men. We don't need to put other people down in order to lift ourselves up. Oprah is being hailed for her speech that could incite a riot. It was so powerful, so evocative, and yet at the same time, it does nothing. It creates no progress. It creates no change. This is a riot that perpetuates the idea that women can't or couldn't do it alone. The men who wore all black in support of the Time's Up movement didn't say anything about it. Most men said nothing or made fun of themselves as men. We disempowered half of the entire audience in order to make ourselves feel better. Men were invited and given permission to be equal. Thank you, Gal Gadot, for telling Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson that you could say the name together because you're equal. Equality doesn't require an invitation or permission or an announcement. Equality just is. It is a mutual respect and admiration for each other. Women patted each other on the back as if doing their job under such horrific conditions was such a tremendous feat. They hailed the Time's Up campaign and each other as heroes. Heroes to the 700,000 women who wrote to them, who work in the agricultural picking and packing industry, women who go to work every day for pennies, despite the horrendous conditions that they have to endure in order to survive and feed their families, women who are stronger than most of us will ever be. This is continuous conditioning that women are weak and powerless, that it would take an entire army of women in order to protect us from situations that are in fact happening when we're each alone. Instead of feeling sorry for these women and patronizing them, we need to give these people tools so that they can defend themselves. Arm them with self-worth. Give them the empowerment of knowing their value. Teach them so that they can fight for equal pay and safe working conditions. Giving them legal funds that require that they have been assaulted or harassed, have filed reports against their employers, and have the time and resources to fight a lengthy legal battle all while not working is just not a luxury most of these people can afford. It's a nice gesture, but it doesn't create change. First, we have to stop calling these men powerful. These are not powerful men. These are weak men who've mastered the art of manipulation. They're not preying on us because we're women. They prey on us because we have a fear. We have a fear of losing our jobs, of losing our careers, of not being able to take care of our families. And this is a fear that both men and women experience. Yet we're not hearing stories of men filing complaints against female employers. And it's not because Hollywood doesn't have its share of female predators. We all share the same fear of saying no to our boss, that we can't work late without getting extra payment, that we can't take on an extra job, that we can't do something outside of our job description, that we can't go out for drinks after work with colleagues, all because we want to maintain our position within our employment. We are all vulnerable because of this fear. And this is where reform needs to happen. We need to stop blaming power dynamics. Meryl Streep said that she was never a victim of Harvey Weinstein because he needed her more than she needed him. That's a power dynamic. Maybe instead of proclaiming that she didn't know it was happening to everyone around her, she could just bottle up some of that and distribute it amongst her colleagues so that everyone else could benefit from that position of power. Isn't marriage also a power dynamic? Is it good or bad that a woman would give up a part of her life for love, that she would take time out of her career to have children, raise her family, take care of her husband? And when that husband came to her and asked for sex, is she obligated to say yes? Is she making a decision based on her own pleasure or her safety and security? Is he implicitly entitled to her body simply because she agreed to marry him? Or do we expect that a husband should ask for verbal consent before he has sex with his wife? Blaming power dynamics doesn't solve our problem. It illuminates the centuries of behavior in which we have all participated. Women have been raised to think of our sexuality as a commodity, and then we shame the women who own their own sexuality. Where are the women who said yes to Harvey Weinstein? Should they be shamed because they actually agreed to engage in an activity that boosted their career? Isn't it still their choice? We can't only take action against predators and not empower people who are vulnerable. There will always be people out there trying to take advantage of people, and there will always be vulnerable people out there. We must be responsible about how we define what is and isn't appropriate behavior, and allow for due process, and determine what is a fair consequence for those actions. Should accidentally touching a coworker's back while giving them a consoling hug be grounds for termination? We can't just take touch out of the workplace. We can't take touch away from our day-to-day lives. Touch is a vital component to who we are as humans, how we connect. And unless we start teaching people what is appropriate sexual contact and non-sexual contact, we can't even begin to draw guidelines for activities and behaviors in the workplace. Many of the networks and production companies have already started mandatory sexual harassment compliance meetings. But what they're telling people isn't helpful. It's become a joke. That you shouldn't go out for drinks with your coworkers after work hours, that if you do go out for drinks with your coworkers, that you're responsible to make sure they don't drink too much. This is not the right message to be sending. We're telling people ultimately they're not responsible for their actions, and whatever happens to them is the other person's fault. More conversations need to happen, more education needs to happen, more actual explicit guidelines need to be created so that people aren't wrongfully terminated. This isn't a battle of the sexes. This is a reformation of our society. Men and women are equal, but we are not the same. We should be allowed to express our femininity, our masculinity, regardless of our preferred pronouns. We should honor and value those qualities in each other. We should celebrate each other's accomplishments regardless of gender. We should understand the difference between sexual and non-sexual touch. We should understand how people interact with one another and how to say when something is or is not okay, and how to ask if we need something from someone. We have to teach nuance. We have to understand what feels good, what doesn't feel good. What feels good from someone may not feel good from someone else. We have a voice. We can have a discussion after the fact if something was uncomfortable. We're two adults. We can talk through things that may or may not be acceptable. It's our job to protect each other, to protect our relationships. We can't take the humanness out of our interactions. We need connection. We need community. This is where we work. This is where we play. This is where we hang out with friends and family. This is our everyday life. And we need to make sure that we're treating each other equally respectfully.